So I found today when I went on Facebook for a little while, which I really just have my business page now. I'm not using Facebook for people. So if you are one of my people and you happen upon this and we haven't discussed it, I guess because we're not close enough for you to have asked me a question about it or me to have explained it to you, um, there's nothing personal there. I'm just wanting to have more real one-on-one relationships. So in my quest to study connection and find out what it's all about, I chose to eliminate my Facebook relating, at least for this time in my life, maybe indefinitely. So, but I still have Facebook because I reactivated for my business page. I found that when I have events, that if I don't have my Facebook page associated, when somebody asks a question, I don't get notified and I don't answer them. And then there were a couple instances where people's questions never got answered about my services on the posts of, event hosts. And I just wanted to eliminate that. So I will sometimes find myself looking through the Facebook feed, and it's no people. It's just all, pages, concepts, a lot of traveling, some identification of insects sites, and Gilmore Girls fans, and various things. But one thing that I encountered today was looking at the comments of a couple different things, where one was the comments where people were discussing about the new tuition forgiveness program, and another was an ad for Amazon Prime where they were offering 50% off for anyone with an EBT or government benefits. An EBT is like a food stamps card. So people were so angry on both of these topics. There was a lot of anger and a lot of resistance and a lot of lashing out. And I'm not going to say that anyone is wrong for their perspectives, and I totally understand that there's a large percentage of the population who have been told a story about how, they are suffering so that others can be provided for. And I don't necessarily see it that way, but I understand that if I did see it that way, that might make me very angry, especially if I was working a job that I hate. And by nature of the way that our culture is set up at this time, it seems to be that a lot of people are forced to work in a job that they do not enjoy. And that is very unfortunate. Personally, I believe that things would be make a lot more sense if we did small intentional communities, instead of one big government for our country, or even the concept of having countries doesn't make sense to me. But I'm not like really politically based. I don't have an interest in debating these topics. Right now, what I see going on is things are kind of crumbling. That's why we have this uproar. But, if people could understand that when we are lashing out at others, what we're actually doing is projecting our pain onto them. Everything is energy. So those that are saying, that are lashing out and feeling the anger of all the pressure that they've been under to keep up with a job that they don't like and pay their bills, and they're lashing out at people that they perceive did not work and have been taken care of fully, freeloaders, I guess they would call them. Basically, the pain that they feel from the predicament they're in, they're trying to place it outside of themselves and put blame on somebody else. Now, this is what humans do in any case when they can't bear the burden of the pain. They project it. It's how it works. We know this is very well known. But I want to present this concept of what we resist persists. Now, I did just do a little video on the same concept, but in this one I wanted to take it a step further, and the reason was just the reason that I just prefaced with, because I saw a lot of angry people. And so, in the case of these angry people, we've got beautiful, hardworking people and beautiful people who are hardworking in other ways, you know? Like, I'm not of the belief that anyone who has to be on state assistance is living the fabulous life that somebody else should be angry at them for, you know what I mean? It's like, and I'm not of the belief that they should all be stripped of every comfort in life and live with nothing, no television, no nothing, just because they can't work. I don't believe that, because I believe that all of us humans are here having different experiences. And I have the benefit of having done a lot of astrology readings, looking at a lot of various charts, and understanding that a lot of different people are here for a lot of different reasons, and a lot of different people have been disempowered and are in a paradigm of thinking that there is not enough. And the result of that is a lot of power struggles, a lot of shaming and blaming, a lot of imbalanced relationships. And if we really understood from a bigger picture view how this works, there would be no need for it, because everybody really is just wanting to be happy, you know? Like, no one wants to be miserable in a job they don't like, and no one wants to be miserable, unable to contribute meaningfully to society. And who's to say that both of those parties aren't doing so anyway? All right, so you have this angry person, and they're lashing out at this other person and saying, well, it's their fault. This person doesn't work, and they're a freeloader, and it's their fault. So they're in resistance to energy, first of all, and because they have put that resistance in the energy, they're projecting it onto somebody else. So they're actually anchoring it to them more and more each time they project it onto somebody else. There will be a time when it comes back to them. They don't know that they're building up all this energy within themselves just by throwing it out there to only see in this other person. Now, if this other person is resisting the energy, that's their own block too. And it's building up in them. So they're defending themselves. They're saying, well, hey, you know, I'm doing what I can, and it's not my fault, and maybe acting a little bit like a victim, right? Now, if this person were to just drop this resistance and just not even respond to that person, right? Not even respond. Let me just get my eraser here. So they're not resisting anymore. And when this other person starts lashing out at them, this person doesn't resist it, so it goes right through them. You know, they're just not going to take it personal, because they understand that what they see coming at them is just some anger. And they can understand anger because they've had their own issues to be angry about in life too. So they're just, on this issue, they've cleared their resistance. Beautiful. Now the energy can flow again. Now this person can start looking for solutions. Because they're not busy resisting, now their energy's freed up to look for a solution to what their own problem is. Now this person's focus is on blaming somebody else. So they're just keep lashing out, keep looking for somebody else to blame. It's somebody else's fault. Meanwhile, there's a solution up here. But this person won't even see it because they refuse to look. They're only looking for someone to blame. So as soon as this person stops projecting and decides to take it back into their own hands, now all of a sudden this solution becomes available to them. Because they're no longer resisting, now they're open to this solution, and the idea comes in. And it's like, oh, a solution that nobody has to lose. Nobody has to lose with this solution, you know? So, in essence, what I'm trying to show is that when we start pointing fingers, shaming and blaming each other, we're just starting a war. And we're not actually solving anything. And we're really just putting division in between us and our fellow humans. Because with this person's idea and this person's idea, now we're talking about real solutions, real ways that we can make change that will affect and help everybody. These two people working together, instead of this one lashing out and this one having to defend themselves. These two people working together towards a solution makes a lot more sense than everybody lashing out and blaming each other. Now, there's a lot kind of behind how we started operating in that manner where we're lashing out. It was kind of fed to us because there are people that, understood this concept. And there are people that know that we're easier to control when we are divided. When we're fighting against each other, they don't have to do much to keep us in control, right? So I think it's time that those kind of systems that have tried to keep us in control are crumbling. And we see that by people are getting just too angry and too sensitive and unwilling to put up with it, Yes, there's always been people complaining about it, but it's really coming to quite a head lately, I think. And it's just kind of being pushed over to the edge with this loan forgiveness kind of stuff, and probably there'll be a lot more things too. But basically anything that's not built on the win-win-win for all isn't going to sustain. It just isn't. Because what will happen is there will always be an opportunity for balance to be created. Okay? So the beautiful benefit of having projected onto another person is when you project it out there, you can see what's in you. You're like, oh, yeah, I see it in them. Let me see where it's in me now. Because you look at what you're seeing outside of you like a holographic output of what energy you have in you. So if this person's harboring anger and hatred towards the fact that they have to work, it makes sense that they would project that anger and hatred onto somebody that they perceive who doesn't have to work. This person really has no idea what this other person's life is like and how much they've suffered, or what their challenges are, or what reason they're not working, or what they actually do behind the scenes, or how many people they serve, or how generous they are, or if they worked at some point, and if they got injured, and if they are about to go back to work, or if they've worked on their own business, or they have no idea, and that way you can kind of see how it's narcissistic for us to kind of just point our fingers without thinking about the other person at all. We're just kind of selfishly labeling other people with our own stuff. And that's all we could ever do if we don't take the time to understand them. No one is what we think they are. Everyone is just what we think. That's it, like whatever you think of me as I'm saying this, it's coming through your own filters and your own perception. So what you think of me is actually in you. So if you think what I'm saying makes sense and is rather intelligent and that it should be utilized towards something greater, then that is you thinking that. That is you understanding that. That is you recognizing the humanity in another person because it exists in you. So, and if you were to kind of blame me and say that my head's in the clouds and I can't really see all the issues, it's like, well, that is you projecting onto me how you feel, because if you have some answers and you're not applying them to life, then it might be easier for you to point a finger at somebody else and say they're not applying it to life. You know what I mean? Like, we can all just do what we're good at, and we're not all good at the same thing. And that's the unique and beautiful design of it. Like, this person's experience and this person's experience will complement each other when they're working together to form a whole bigger picture. You know, we need everybody. Everybody matters. Not just the people who work, you know? It's everybody. And the system that we have set up, if we have some people who can't keep up in that system, maybe that's not the right system. You know what I mean? So maybe there is an argument for restructuring, and maybe we don't even have to argue about it, right? Because there's a lot of evidence of it. There's a lot of evidence that a restructuring could be beneficial, because these people don't like how it is, and these people might not like how it is, so why wouldn't we just restructure it? Why would we instead just keep pointing fingers at each other, yelling at each other, and telling each other how wrong each other is, and blaming each other? Like, that literally is just a war, and it's a big waste of energy, and it solves nothing when there are solutions available. The only thing that's keeping us from working towards solutions is the fact that we are busy fighting. So if we withdraw our projections, take responsibility back within ourselves to deal with how we feel about a thing. If we feel angry about a thing, that's okay, but it's our responsibility to be with the part of us who's angry. It's our responsibility to love the part of us who is angry. It's our responsibility to understand the part of us who is angry. It's no one else's responsibility. It's kind of like this person is kind of saying, well, it's you're responsible for my anger and my having to suffer. And what they're saying is, like, that this person's responsible because they didn't work, and that they made them responsible for taking care of them. But meanwhile, this person, by saying that, is doing the same exact thing by saying, well, you're responsible for my upset. It's like, you can't call something out without being it. So if we each take responsibility for our own stuff that we feel, and withdraw our projections, and remember that there are solutions, and put our focus towards them, and it's sort of like in the universe, you ask and you shall receive. So if you need to understand something, ask. If you need to find a solution, ask. If you want to share your idea, ask if somebody wants to hear it. There's just so much more efficient way to utilize this energy in the way it works. And I think there are definitely things that keep us from doing so. And some of it is that, you know, people who are projecting, they don't want to be wrong. They don't want it to be their fault. They don't want to be burdened anymore. They're overwhelmed. They don't know the solution, so they get panicked. All of those things are valid, but they're still our own responsibility for dealing with. It's our own responsibility to deal with whatever it is we're feeling. And it's a valid feeling for us because it's the one we have. Okay, and so basically it might help to understand what these kind of coping mechanisms are and why it feels like do or die. It's because when we're children and we encounter something that's overwhelming and we can't process it fully enough to understand it, we will store it in our energy body. We will develop a coping mechanism to avoid feeling that feeling again. And then we will operate using the coping mechanism. And some of the coping mechanisms that humans have developed are things like having pride, are things like not admitting they're wrong, are things like being in denial, are things like putting on rose-colored glasses, are things like blaming others, are things like projecting onto others, are things like power struggles, are things like being a victim, are things like being a savior. Are things like trying to paint themselves as superior in some way and more valuable. And none of those things are true. Absolutely none of those things are true. They are literally just things that we developed in order to cope with an uncomfortable feeling that we were not yet prepared to process in childhood, and that in order to move on from, we now must take responsibility for processing. And in some of us, we've been ignoring it so long, and we've been telling ourselves a story about how to operate in these conditions for so long that we've bypassed the feeling that we don't even have an inkling of an idea that anything is in there, ignored by us, waiting to be felt and loved. And so there is a lot of stubbornness when it comes to these things. And you can't really convince people if they don't want to understand. So, what I've realized is if someone doesn't want to understand me, then I don't have to explain to them. Like, that's not a conversation I'm going to invest in. Period. If you haven't asked me for the purpose of understanding me, then there's no conversation for us to have. If somebody is coming to me and genuinely would like to understand my point of view, and is not asking me a question just to try to humiliate me or make me feel lesser, or to try to insinuate that I should be questioning myself, because in those cases there's no reason for me to respond, because that's literally just that war, that's that power struggle, that's that someone else's need to assert that they're right. When we've been punished and rewarded into adulthood, there are very high stakes on being wrong. So if you make a mistake in childhood and the parenting method has been punishment and reward, you get punished. So there are a lot of adults walking around unwilling to be wrong because they were punished for being wrong, and there is something inside them that will not allow them to be wrong now. The other thing is, with punishment and reward parenting, we see that our parents walk around deciding if we needed to be punished or rewarded. So we also see a lot of adults walking around looking at other people to decide if they need to be punished or rewarded. And so a lot of these discussions that kind of happen where people are pointing fingers are simply the result of an adult who grew up with punishment and reward parenting, who is carrying on that programming from their parents. The programming that says, decide who needs to be punished and who needs to be rewarded. Decide who's right and who's wrong. Decide what's okay and what's not. When really this parenting method is a way to stifle children and keep people in control. The same way that I talked about in the beginning of this discussion, where I said it's been programmed into us, this level of division to keep us under control. It was presented as a parenting method. It was probably a good step up from corporal punishment, because we know that hitting our kids doesn't work, and now we know that punishment and rewarding our kids doesn't work either. I love the Montessori method. I haven't studied it in depth enough to know all the ins and outs of it, but basically the concept that I understand about it is that the children get to learn from consequences, and they get to learn to self-regulate their own emotions. They get to be who they really are, and they get to navigate the world using their curiosity, which does not get squashed. And they're also not fed programs of fear. Like when your child is exploring the world and you're like, be careful, for everything they do. It's like, that is how you instill fear into an operating system of a human. So then that adult grows up, and that's the adult who's too careful to take a risk and do anything fun or out of their comfort zone. That's the adult that has a lot of anxiety when they're faced with a new challenge. So the Montessori method allows children to learn and build their own self-reliance in a safe manner, because of course the role of the parent becomes to make sure that they're safe while they're doing this, while they're exploring, and while they're building their self-confidence and self-esteem, and their worth is inherent. There's no pride. There's no like, I'm proud of you because you did that. No, it's I honor your process. As many times as you fall trying to climb on that, I honor you. It's all of that is just as valuable as the time you made it to the top. I honor your process. This is a much more balanced and healthy way to instill programming in our children that will help them navigate the world in such a way that does not require them to be at war with themselves or each other. This is how we allow peace on earth to reign. And I'm so glad that I understand this, and that it exists, and that it's what we're moving towards. And I am honored to be a part of the world as we move towards this. I'm so glad for us. Okay, so share your thoughts, share your questions. What does this make you feel? What does it make you think? Are you willing to take responsibility in the way that I've described? Or if you're not, what is it that feels hard about that? Do you want to discuss it further? Give me some feedback or some ideas if you feel like it. If not, I'll see you in the next one.